Welcome to Deco Guide, the only app designed to help you navigate your college and career journey in the quickest and most affordable way. This podcast is brought to you by EdTechity, dedicated to opening doors to higher education and career opportunities for all.
What's up, everyone? It's Professor G. Today I got Dr. U again, and today we're tackling what's this thing called imposter syndrome.
Good afternoon. This is Robert Nsueta. You call me Dr. U. So we're here to talk about imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome assumes that you, the individual, have a problem, and that you, the individual, are the one who needs to adjust to fit to the school. And I'm gonna.
So wait. So before we even go there, give me an example. What do you mean, like? Imposter meaning I feel like say I feel like an imposter. I walk into a classroom and I feel like I don't belong here.
Yes.
Right. And I'm a Chicano male, right? And from the Salinas Valley, and I walk into a college campus or wherever, right? Could be a job,
right? Could
be a college campus, could be a library, a public setting, right? The city hall. And I walk in, but now I feel like I don't belong here. So I think people use this term called imposter syndrome because I feel like I'm an imposter.
Right. And you get that from the way people look at you, the way they talk to you, or the way they don't talk to you, right? It's like going to a restaurant or a nice store, and right, no one serves you. No one offers, do you need a table, or do you need help? Could I help you try this on, right? It's more of a, what are you doing here? Maybe we ignore you.
This happened to me at the mall.
Right. Maybe we ignore you and you go away, or, I just won't talk to you, or I'm going to talk to you in a way that makes you know that we don't really want you here.
So it's this uncomfortable feeling that I have.
Correct.
Right? Okay. So imposter syndrome, everyone tends to feel it at one point or another, especially, I would say, people of color, right?
Yes.
Chicanos like myself. I feel it often, to be honest with you.
Right.
So tell me what is that, and how do I deal with that?
Yeah. So I think the first time I felt that on a college campus is when I finally transferred to St. Mary's College of California, and I was out there after class. I met with someone that I knew there, and we were talking. And there was a group of people that he was also talking to, and I remember someone asked me, "Do you go to school here?" And it's like 10 o'clock in the morning. This campus is isolated, and there's no public. This is not downtown. People just don't walk through. And I have a backpack too, right? I just got out of class, and I looked at her like, "What?" Because it was so jarring. Like, what do you mean? What am I doing here? And that's not what I said, but that was my first thing in my head. And some of those things are so off-putting or so shocking. The response is like delayed. And the only thing I can think of was be a smartass.
Yeah.
Be a smartass.
Yeah.
I was like,
I'm going to protect myself.
Yeah. My dad works in the cafeteria. I'm just here hanging out.
Yeah.
What's your name? And it was like, what? And then my friend was laughing. And I was like, no, I'm a student here. Like, what the fuck? What do you think I'm doing here?
Right.
And so it's those signals, those reminders that you do not fit into a certain place. Like, you are not what we understand as being a part of the culture here, being a part of what is normal. You are considered everything else but belonging there. And so that develops this idea that we're imposters. We don't belong. And that's further affirmed once you start to take these classes and you are one of few in these classes, or you're one of few who share your experience, right? And so that makes us think that we are the imposters. And so how I dealt with it was, I'm not an imposter. I belong here just like everyone else. The difference is that the institution that I'm part of, the school I'm a part of, does not reflect me, does not reflect my community. So the problem is not me, but it's the school itself. And I could tell you that idea of being an imposter, you're gonna feel for the rest of your life, because these schools, these places were not created for us. When they were not intended for a lot of us. We are not the student body or demographic that they had in mind when they created the school and they did the outreach and they created these programs. We weren't who they intended for the school to be.
Right, because historically, right, schools were built for white men.
White men?
Historically.
White men.
Right? And then
white wealthy men.
Right.
And white middle class men.
And then they started allowing like white women,
right?
And wealthy women,
Yep.
and then a little bit lower income whites. And then eventually they had to say, okay, we can allow some blacks in, and we can allow some browns in, and Native American in. But that's what you mean, is historically, the institutions here were not built to teach us.
Correct.
Right? Or for our populations to learn.
Yep.
And so we fast forward to 2023, and many of these institutions are still practicing the same policies and practices that eliminate everyone else other than the white populations.
And if it's not done like maybe visually, but it's also done like culturally, and the idea is, unfortunately, with imposter syndrome, that it's the student's onus to adapt to the institution. It's my job now to change everything about me to adapt to the institution. Now, there is a level of growth that will happen when you change your environment and go to a new setting and a new culture. No doubt there will be growth, and you will grow with that culture, but it does not have to be at the total expense of everything who you are to make you feel that's what you need to succeed, because it's the college's job or the institution's job, who's making money off of you and your enrollment, right? Whether you pay through Pell Grants and financial aid, or you take out loans, or your mom and dad pay for it, whoever, or you pay for yourself, no matter what, they're going to get their check. And so, I mean, it's their job to serve students to succeed. That includes you. Now, whether you're 10% of the population, 20% of the population, or 1% of the population, their job is to not only get you to come to that school, but to finish and to go on to where you need to be. And so it's the onus of the school to make you feel welcomed. And for the most part, that's also an impossible task, because you're talking about the school acknowledging that history and working backwards to address, that, however long the school is open, 100 years of deliberately excluding people like you, not just you, but also faculty, administration, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. And even though the school may not deliberately do it and actively act on it, it's internalized.
Yep.
Right? It's in the system already. So you don't have to actively discriminate against someone anymore, because it's built within the practices and the policies and the expectations of the people within the system.
Yep, including faculty, including staff, including administration, right? And so
we're going to give you a quick example here. I went to Cuesta Community College back in the blah, blah, 19, whatever, right?
All right.
And man, I was the only Mexicano in every class. Mm-hmm. Right. And it wasn't until I walked out, and I'm walking through the school, that I see another brown person. I'm like, hey, what's up? I don't know who the heck they are, but there was an almost instant like, hey, what's up? Hopefully I see you. And they see me, because no one else sees us. Right. And again,
well, they see you. They see you.
But I felt like no one else saw me. Right. And then I went, and then I fast forward 3 hours later to say I took a drive to Hartnell College in Salinas, and I feel like I belong, in every class there.
Yeah.
But when I go back to Cuesta, I feel like I'm the imposter. Mm-hmm. Right. And after so many years of school, and I realize is this institution is what makes me feel this way. Mm-hmm. Right. It isn't me feeling this way. Yep. It's this institution that makes me feel this way, with the potential expectation that I won't come back.
Yes. And that feeling of imposter syndrome, unfortunately, doesn't go away at times, right? I remember one of the faculty job I had, I was the only man of color on campus. The only faculty out of 100 and something employees who were faculty to be a brown man. In fact, the only man of color, period. And so that dramatically impacted how I felt. Right?
And how you interact.
And how I interact. And so, events, I remember going to meetings and people see me and they wouldn't talk to me. Mm-hmm. It's like, you've seen me for a year now. Mm-hmm.
I'm part of this team.
You know what I do. You know who I am. Your students have my class. Like, you know that I'm here, but yet it's that let me put my head down and act like they don't see me.
Yeah, they refuse to engage with
right. And what I've learned over time about imposter syndrome or feeling like I don't belong and that's okay, because maybe this is not the right institution for me. If I feel so unwelcome at an institution, maybe it's time for me to find another institution, because you as a student, you as an employee have a choice. And if that place is not the place that is going to help you get where you need to get, or help you feel welcome to enough to succeed at what you set out to do, then fuck them. Take your money, take your time, take your energy somewhere else, because they're lucky to have you.
And this isn't just college.
No,
this is like your job.
Oh,
right?
man.
Like if you have a job, right, where you feel imposter syndrome, then that job might not be the right job for you. And it's rare that I tell people, hey, quit. But I've told people, hey, it's time for you to start looking for another job.
Yep.
Right? Because that institution, that organization
doesn't value you.
Exactly. Your uniqueness, what you bring to the table, and they do it in a way where you feel unwelcome.
Yep.
Right? And which is one of those first feelings of an imposter syndrome, right? Is I feel unwelcome.
Right.
But it's not your fault.
Nope.
Whatever we're going to talk about imposter syndrome is the organization's fault.
Correct.
It's not the individual.
It's a culture they develop to, and again, it's often predatory. Right, and I'm gonna call it for what it is. I see it as predatory. You should be thankful you're here. You should be thankful you have a job. You should be thankful that we employed someone like you. You should be thankful that you go to school here. You should be thankful that this is happening. And what that does is neglects what they should be thankful for, that you are here, that you do show up, and that they should supporting you and your growth.
And you're bringing a unique perspective
that they often need, because they cannot do it themselves. Because this idea that you as a student or as an employee, what you bring, that uniqueness that you bring, is often tapping into a deficiency that the school has and they need to address. So if you're one of the few students of color, they need you there, right? They need you statistically. They need you for funding reasons. They need you statistically there, and it's their job to make sure you succeed. And if you're an employee, they also need you there too, because they get dinged on stuff like that when they get their audits and reviews. And you have no faculty of color, you have no staff of color. What's going on here? What's the problem? So they need you more than you need them often, and the skill set that you bring is transferable to other places that make you feel welcome or make you feel wanted. And no matter what institution you go to, it's never going to be perfect. There's no doubt, because again, this is built on the exclusion of many of our communities. So no matter what, you're going to feel that at times. The question is, for me, it's a 60-40. What is the 60% that I could live with, that I'm happy with, that I gain, that I get for myself? And there's also going to be 40% bullshit that I'm going to navigate. But once you cross that threshold and it's more than that 40% or 35% sometimes, then it's time for me to move on. And we have the ability, especially now as a student, you have choice. If you're an employee, you have choice. You're not stuck or married to you're married, right? You can still leave, right? It's not forever. Mm-hmm. And it's up to you to see your self-worth and not, I feel bad or I should be happy that I'm here. And I see it all the time. Fear of not finding something else. Fear of not fitting in somewhere else. The fear that this is as good as it's going to get. It paralyzes people sometimes.
It does. Absolutely. It paralyzes not only your personal growth, but your professional growth.
Definitely.
Now, you've worked with thousands of students over the years.
Yes.
Right? And you see imposter syndrome
all the time.
Amongst some of your students, right?
With my colleagues, with myself at times, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes this conversation I need to hear myself. Mm-hmm. What are you afraid of? Mm-hmm. Move on.
Yeah.
Go somewhere else.
Yep. Right. Look for value elsewhere.
Yep.
Right. And so part of being in college, mm-hmm. right, for a student of color, mm-hmm. I'm a Chicano male, mm-hmm. right? I went through all of that identity searching and mm-hmm. finding why, because I was wanting to drop out every day.
Right.
I was almost looking for an excuse mm-hmm. to get out of here, right? Mm-hmm. And I had to deal with the imposter syndromes internally myself, because when I was in school, this wasn't really a term. No one really, they just, well, he just doesn't want to be here. No, I want to be here.
Yes.
I would love for this place to be my home. But if my home is treating me with such disrespect and making me feel like I don't deserve to be here, that's where a lot of our students decide to then leave.
Right.
Right. And they believe that maybe my next institution is going to treat me the same, and they don't go on.
Yep.
Right. But we're here to tell you that if you're there, right, feeling this, there's a couple ways to deal with it, right? Is you could potentially stick it out at this institution, bring light to the problems that this institution is having that causes the imposter syndrome in its students of color, right? The other option is leave this institution, find a new institution that doesn't have the same issues as the previous institution, but that's going to require you now looking around, finding a different place where you feel empowered enough, right, to continue. But remember, it's never the fault of the person that.
No. And so even let's say you're going to stick it out, you're going to. I have tons of examples from St. Mary's of aggressions that occurred to me, things that were saying from not just students but faculty that would make me feel like I don't belong. Like one time, I don't know, I just got tatted up, and one of the teachers was like, "Oh, that looks like a prison tattoo." I was like, "Bro, I'm in your class. Like, what do you mean? Like, I got that so I was locked up this weekend? Like, you know what I mean? Like, come on." I turned in my homework on time. Like, shut the fuck up, right? Or another one was like, we were talking about immigration, and they were like, Europeans have a stronger tie to their land versus like people from Mexico and stuff like that. And I was like, didn't you all get here on a boat too? Like, what the fuck are you talking? Like things like that, right? And so one of the things that I as great as it was, I also found, it was very hostile too, right? And there was that imposter syndrome. But how I navigated that was finding a network of peers, right? I don't need to be everyone's friend. I don't need to be cool with everyone. I just need a small circle of people who are going to help me navigate this space together. And together, collectively, just like at home, we were able to navigate it, right? Single, by ourselves, we didn't have enough to muster all that BS that we had to navigate that created this imposter syndrome. But collectively, as a group, we were able to navigate and function and thrive together. And then you find your allies and the staff or faculty, right? And from there, right, you could push and continue to persist if that's the route you want to take. If you want to stay, cool, but you need to find that
allies.
Allies and networks that are
sometimes your allies is other professors of color.
Yep.
Right. Sometimes your allies is a student club or organization. Right. Whatever. I'm glad you're bringing that up, because I was going to drop out of community college at Cuesta once every week. And then I stumbled upon MECHA, el Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano Aztlán, which is a student organization of race conscious Latinos who understand a lot of these things we're going to go through, especially being new. And that group allowed me the safe space to share some of these bad experiences I was having, these feelings of inadequacy that I was having, right? And they were there to help me reinforce. Mauricio, there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
You're totally normal.
Yeah.
You're actually more normal than the school.
Right.
It's the school's environment. It's these certain groups, within the school or policies or practices that are making you feel this way.
Yes.
And those feelings are the ones triggering you to want to leave.
Yep.
Which is what the system may ultimately want a brown guy like you to do.
Yes.
Right? Is leave. Because the least educated that you are, the less opportunities you're going to have in terms of high-level professional employment, right? Having more money to have, the ability to protect your family, right? I got lawyers, right? It's like, hey, someone want to mess with mom? They're going to have to deal with, the homies now. And it's those kinds of things, right? Those external groups that can help you overcome some of these feelings if you choose to stay in these institutions that can be outright hostile.
Yes. And then the second option is you don't have to, but doesn't mean you have to stop. whatever your goal is. Maybe you find, a better opportunity in another place, but the most important thing is that you don't stop. But at the same time, doesn't mean you have to engage in a level of abuse that's unhealthy, because I've seen a lot of people who put up with it because they think they have to, and unfortunately that damages them in ways that they don't recover, or they end up internalizing these things and start replicating when they're in their professional career, and they become
the oppressor,
part of the culture, whether they're a person of color or not, right? A part of the culture of upholding some of these really messed up norms of, blaming individuals or, targeting particular students, or upholding this idea that there's only one way to exist in these spaces. And so you have options and you have choices, but the most important thing to understand is, you don't feel welcome because you're not supposed to. This was not created for you. And we have hundreds of years of unlearning, of changing policies and practices and beliefs around you as an individual from those who run these institutions. And so if you don't feel welcome, you won't. But that doesn't mean you don't belong. Right? Because you do. Is how do you find your mechanisms to survive it? And if not, if it's too much, then that's okay too. But you have to find another avenue. And there are other places that might be more welcoming for you or more conducive to your success.
That's right. And like working in our system, right? We work in the largest system of higher education in America, which is the California community colleges, right? 116 colleges. Right. Not all of them are the same. Some of them are going to make you feel like you're an imposter.
Right.
This is brutally honest being here now, right? And some of them won't. And it really just depends on where that institution is at with true equity, right? Their equity initiatives, making sure that, they are working to undo the historical reasons why they were created, were to eliminate and not educate certain populations, right? And that's just the reality that we're working. It is against the law to discriminate in higher education, but there's practices and policies and behaviors that institutions still use, and that could hurt those individuals that don't belong to what the populations that those institutions were created for.
Right.
Now, give me a couple more examples of, say, some of your students that you see brand new that may be going through some things, that have to do with imposter syndrome. And what is a piece of advice you would give those individuals?
I think the biggest example is not only what they've gone through, but is what I've gone through. And it sounds like what you've gone through is, I've been told for so long that I wasn't this, I wasn't smart, that I wasn't capable, I wasn't college ready or bound. And sometimes we internalize that so much that we don't realize that every semester is a fresh start. Every semester is a brand new beginning. What happened last semester, what happened last year, doesn't matter, because each time you enroll in a new class, it's a brand new beginning. You have another chance, another opportunity to start over. And from that, I think the biggest thing that I had to learn about this imposter syndrome, or this idea that I didn't belong, was learning to take things off my plate that weren't mine. That, almost like there was the life stuff that I had no choice, but there was also self-created distractions that I found myself embedded in. I just had this conversation with a family member who was going to re-enroll into college, and it was a very difficult conversation, but it was, this is now your chance. This is now this is for you and your obligation, and this means you have to do this for yourself. That also means you have to let go of other parts of your life that are not aligned with this, or who can distract you or pull you away from this time. And so maybe that means you're not going to do this on this weekend anymore. Maybe you're going to give that up because this is now your new job. And for me, the biggest thing that I had to face was owning that I belong. Even as someone as a professional now, like, I had to own I belong here. Not only I belong here, but I've worked to be here. And just like everyone else, I had to go through the same process. And in reality, I actually had to go through more because I started off like way behind. But that also means I have to let go of certain things that are not propelling me forward, right? And sometimes that means relationships with people who are not necessarily positive or moving in that direction. Sometimes that means letting go of certain habits that aren't good, moving me forward in what I need to do. And so I think the biggest thing for me was recognizing the bullshit of the institution and what was wrong with it, but then coming to a point of self-assessment and like, okay, this is what I could do for myself because this is now my new reality, and letting go of particular things and now creating space for this. And now once you accomplish it, once you do it, you can now assess like, well, this is what works for me, this is what doesn't work for me. But yeah, I think it's an ongoing conversation, and what's important is that it doesn't end. Your self-doubt will always come. You're always going to be placed in an environment with new leadership opportunities, new administration, new things will always come up.
And when you go to work professionally, it's going to continue.
Yes, and so it's okay.
Every company is different.
Right, it's okay that you feel that way. The question is, what's next? And once you get past that, understanding the pros and cons list, right? I always recommend write a pros and cons list of the school you're at or the work you're at and make an informed decision.
That's right. And I've been a counselor for many years, a couple decades now, and every student has to look at their college experience differently.
Yep.
I've told some students, hey, listen, right away, this place is going to eliminate you. You need to, toughen up because it's built that way. And I could tell from this particular student, they're a peleonero, right? They like to fight. But I got to gear them in a way where they will fight positively here. You know what I mean? And start and become part of the change, not only for self, but for the system, right? To the school that they're at. While with other students, I may give the advice, hey, let's find you a different location, right? Where you can grow, right? Because they're at different stages and different types of personalities that some can make the change, others aren't ready to make the change, others are ready to take it on full blown and confront, right, the system and say, no, I do belong here. Others, don't want to take that route, right? And I think that's key for anyone listening is we all have these different mentors, whether it's a professor in my classroom, whether it's a counselor that I may have ran into, whether it's a family member, right, that provides you that kind of survival advice, right? It could be totally different, but ultimately you make that decision based on how you're willing to address the uncomfortableness, right, that an institution is causing you. But at the end of the day, when we talk about imposter syndrome, I'm not accepting blame for that. I didn't create that. Right? I'm feeling that, but I didn't create it. And that's the moral of this conversation is if you're feeling that, you need to first acknowledge that you didn't create this. So you're not to blame for this. Right? You may have to live it here for a little while at this, point in your life, but it's really about how do we survive it? Because we didn't create it. So quit blaming me. Right. Mauricio feeling uncomfortable is not Mauricio's problem. It's the institution's problem that I feel uncomfortable, right? If that's what it's coming down to be. And if I choose to leave, the institution will lose an employee, right? We'll lose obviously money because, diversity is profitable, right? People always ask, they always ask me, well, in different discussions in class, when we talk about, the economic output of America, I go, listen, it's the diversity that keeps us on top. It's the diversity of our military forces. It's the diversity of our economic forces, right? These organizations can't do it without the diversity, and diversity proves to make organizations more money and more productive. But if that organization's making me feel like I don't belong, then it's time for me to really consider a new organization, right? Or consider changing it from within and taking on the battle, right? And you've been in those situations where you've taken on the battle at certain institutions. I've been in those situations, and it's not a pleasant.
No. And some of it, sometimes I'll take on the battle, and sometimes I'm just out.
Yeah.
because it's about what makes sense for you in that moment and what is going to put you in the position to succeed. And that looks different for all of us at different stages. There's moments I went head on and I was ready to go, and there's moments I was like, I'm going to walk away because I can't do this. This output is too much for me. And so how could I use this opportunity to move on to what's next?
Or empower others.
Yep.
Right? Train others to recognize it. Train others to ensure that they're giving the right advice to those that are experiencing it. Because at the end of the day, if you're feeling it, it ain't your fault.
Nope.
It's the institutions.
Nope.
So how would you, last piece of advice, you got a freshman kid in your class, okay, Chicano, Latina, whatever, right, coming in, African-American, says they don't feel comfortable at your college, right? What's the first couple things you would ask them to consider or to do?
It really depends on what they're uncomfortable with, right? Because there's some things we could push the envelope because that's the direction the school's already going in. So, right, this could be the catalyst to push it over the hill. Or it could be something like there's no way in hell this institution is going to ever budge on that because this is not where they're at. And then so that conversation is, well, what could we do to help you navigate this? Or is this again the conversation, this may not be an ideal fit right now for you in this life? But I think my always go-to is, this is temporary, right? This is all temporary. And and when you're my age, what you did here, as an 18-year-old, 17-year-old, is going to be a blip in your memory.
Yeah.
It's going to be like that. And even the outcomes of this is going to be like that in relationship to the goal and path you've already set out on. Education and career-wise, right? Your first year, your one class, your 3 classes is like this. So how do we use this opportunity as a moment to grow and learn? What could you take away from this experience that are going to position you with tools to navigate this? Because that uncomfortability you feel, that unwelcomeness, you're going to get when you get your first job. You're going to get when you get your second job. You're going to get when you do that career shift, but your third job. So what are the lessons and tools that you can gain from this experience that you can put in your toolbox to navigate later? My last choice is always, leave the institution is a bold one, but it's always on the table, right? If it's that bad. But I always try to recommend first, well, what could we learn here? Because even in loss, even in uncomfortability, even in our moments of we feel like defeat, there are valuable lessons to take away that we can apply later, because it's college. It's all about learning. It's about learning from mistakes. It's about learning from, all right, if that was the case, we wouldn't be here, because
learning self.
Learning everything, right? Including how to navigate these organizations, because it's much different.
Yeah, and the more hostile that organization, the more imposter syndrome you may feel.
Right. And so what could you learn from it? What do you take away from it? Is it that, hey, for example, I've been in spaces when I was looking for PhD programs, and the whole culture and the environment of it wasn't jiving with me. So I learned in that moment, this is not the type of professor I ever want to be. This is not the type of person I want to be in relationship to students and mentorship, right? So even in bad lessons, there are lessons to take away for myself. This is not the environment I want to work in, or this is not the culture I want to create. So even if it's a lesson, the lesson can be what you don't want to be or what you don't want to replicate.
Right. You learn from the worst just as much as you learn from the great, best.
Right? Yes. So I think it's all a lesson, and understanding that's a temporary lesson, because that one class, that one institution is 2-3 years and you're out.
That's right.
And so,
and one last thing I normally tell some of my newer students that still haven't, committed fully to, say, an academic institution, I say, look, this is a public place, man.
Yeah.
This is yours.
Yep.
You own these hallways. You own these buildings. You here is paying those faculty salaries, the administrator salaries, and there's behaviors that they want to teach you, right, of professionalism and stuff. But you use those behaviors to also address the inequities within the system, because this place is yours, right? Since my kids were really small, I would, anytime we go somewhere and there's a public school like a university, a UC, a CSU, or a community college, we will stop on purpose, park, get off, run around the grass, walk into the buildings. We're not students there, right? But I wanted to give my kids that sense that, hey, this is a public institution, meaning you belong here. You know, even though you're 10 years old and you're running around, you can walk into these buildings. Why? Because it's taxpayer money. Right? Now, you can't interrupt a class. Right. Don't walk into a classroom screaming, you know, and that kind of stuff. But I need you to understand that even though this place looks super fancy and you may feel like you don't belong here, you belong here. You own this place, mijo. You own this place, mija. And doing that early with, say, my children has allowed them now to be able to have the confidence in walking into almost any institution, whether it's a courthouse, whether it's another college or university, because we've instilled in them young that if it's public, that means it belongs to the public, and you're the public, whether the institution doesn't want you there or not.
Especially if you're a student who pays tuition, it is your space. It is always your space. Without you, there is no institution. And so there's a collective of you feeling that, well.
That's right. So anyways, these conversations are a lot harder to have. Why? Because we all feel those. You feel them to this day. I feel them to this day. But the moral of this story is imposter syndrome is not your problem. It's the problem of the institution. You have to navigate that institution. So make sure you use the powers that be, the powers in your own self, in those groups that would advocate to ensuring that those feelings are minimized as much as possible. All right.
I appreciate it.
Hey, man. Gracias for the interview. Of course. Gracias for your knowledge. And check out, Dr. Yu's continued content building with us on addressing some of these issues that no one ever talks about, right? Because no one ever talked to me about imposter syndrome and how to prepare for it or what to do when I feel it, right? But as we like to do here at Teco, we like to tell you the truth.
And I think the more you feel uncomfortable, the more you're doing right.
The more you belong.
Yeah. The day you're accepted, I'd be a little worried.
Anyways, Dr. Yu, thank you for the time.
All right.
And we'll see you in the next podcast.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into Teco Guide, the app focused on bringing you tools and content to help you make better decisions about school, life, and career. We hope this episode has inspired you to pursue and excel in your own educational and career journey. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and share.